Leilani Dowding, welcome to the Freeman Report.
Thanks for having me on. Thanks. It's been a long time chatting to you, and I've not actually been on, so thanks for having me.
I know we should have saved the conversation we've just had, so let's just repeat it because we were kind of saying that, you know, I kind of feel like I know you. I've never spoken to
Yeah.
you personally, and I feel like I know you because you were there all the way through COVID on social media, and we've always kind of come through all of that. And I can't think of any topic that's come through where we've not been on the same. There might be one, maybe Israel. I don't know, but we always seem to be on the same page.
Yeah, no, I think we pretty much are all the way through. And it's the same. It's really strange when you think you really have met somebody in person because you get along, you watch their stuff, maybe you've spoken in a WhatsApp group or something. But it's strange, isn't it, when you think, God, actually, I haven't met this person in real life.
Yes. Well, obviously we're in kind of cyberspace rather than real life, but this will do for the moment. So I think it's long overdue, this conversation. Now, I think most people who watch this in my channel will know who you are, but there will be some that don't. I've got a big following in Romania, believe it or not, with
Wow.
what's going on in the elections out there.
Yes.
So for the benefit of them, obviously you're a former model, but just give us a little bit of a flavor of, what do you do these days and what's your background?
So I was a model. I also did a lot of TV shows, and I think that that's where when the whole COVID lockdown thing kicked off, where I ended up in the media for the wrong reasons because I was going against this lockdown narrative. I was completely against it, and I ended up being, strewn all across the paper saying this former model, this former reality whatever you want to call one of those people that does reality shows, one of those reality people, that she's putting lives in danger. She's against the lockdowns. She's against the masking. She's against mandatory jabs, and I think that's where I suddenly got known for this newer thing. Then people would kind of ask me to come on their shows, discuss the topics that I feel that I will speak freely. I will say what I want about them because I have no one to answer to. I don't have a boss. I can't get fired. Um, any of that. Right at the start, I think my TV agent said, Alana, you might not ever work in mainstream TV again. And I was like, you know what? Fine. I'm kind of over it. I don't have any ambitions whatsoever in the media, and I never have. So, things have just fallen into my lap. So I don't care. I'll say what I want. And I think that's kind of what I've become known for. A few people then started saying I was a political commentator because I was speaking on some political things. But I just want to point out that I know very little about actual politics. Everything I say comes from more of what's going on in society, what I see as the regular person, how I feel about certain social issues, whether it was, BLM, Me Too, the trans issue, lockdowns, mandates, all of that kind of stuff. So I've always come from, this, just as I see it, that kind of angle. But everything's been so politicized
Yeah.
that now, it's far right to think a certain way, or there's just nonsense. So I think that that's where suddenly I've got this reputation, or people have said, oh, she's a political commentator, but it's more like a social commentator, I would say, because that's what it's always been about. So that's kind of where I am now on a day-to-day basis. I'm a landlord. I have an Airbnb. I look after a bunch of chickens and and horses on my little small holding. And as I said, I don't have like any ambitions in the media. So if someone wants to cancel me tomorrow, whatever.
Do you miss the modeling?
No, not at all. At that time, it was the best. I had the best years of my life. It was wonderful. Um, there was a lot of travel. I wasn't necessarily settled in one place, but at that age, in my 20s, I didn't mind. I absolutely loved it and wouldn't change a thing. But now I don't think I have the energy for it. I don't have, I wouldn't have the will to go to castings. I don't even know if people do real life castings anymore, if it's done online or how that all works. But I don't have the energy for it. And I can't really be bothered with my appearance the way I used to be.
Well, the other thing
Or
is
used to
because
be.
you're very much like me, I think, and as well as having an opinion on everything, you're not afraid to speak your mind as well. So I think if
Yes.
you hadn't chosen to leave, you'd probably be cancelled anyway, wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I did a reality show called The Housewives of Cheshire, and I just can't imagine they would ever consider having me back on after what I've said in the last 4 years. It is definitely not something they don't take people like me and put them on the mainstream in any kind of thing like that anymore. So yeah, like I said, I'm pretty outspoken and I say what I think. So
Yeah.
it doesn't really go with mainstream anymore.
Let's play a game, a hypothetical. A guy has been in a coma. He's been in a coma since 1995, 30 years, and he's just woken up. And he asks you, what's going on in the world? What would you say?
Look at my hats. It's like clown world. I wouldn't even know what to say. You know what? I'd say, have you read the book 1984 by George Orwell? Because that's what's going on. We're living in a world where everything's just opposite. It's, war
Yeah.
is peace. Men can be women, which they can't. And, but that's what we're being told. They're clamping down on free speech, thought crimes, all sorts of things. So yeah, I'd just say if you've read the book, it's kind of happening.
I think I would probably just say, look, don't worry about it, go back to sleep. I wouldn't bother waking up if
No,
I was
I
you.
know. For me, if I think of the 90s, I was probably on Bournemouth Beach every summer as like as a young teenager, left there by my parents because it was safe, in a little bikini with my friends, walking home once it started to get dark, through the gardens, into the town centre to get picked up. You couldn't do that now. You know,
Yeah,
kids, you're getting assaulted, stabbed in a little place like Bournemouth. It's not even our big cities anymore. So it would be really sad to wake up from how it was and see how it is now.
definitely, definitely. Let's start with the UK because we're gonna do a little bit of a section on UK and then the US because I think we both got a lot to say about
Yes.
what's going on in both countries. Um, what do you make of this thing with Reform UK going on with Rupert Lowe at the moment?
Well, I'm really disappointed. I'm really disappointed, and I think there was a lot of things like I ignored. And I put to the side and I was like, right, okay, reform's bigger than Nigel, reform's bigger than Richard Tice, reform's a whole movement. You've got all these people behind it. But I really, really like Rupert Lowe as an MP and
Yeah,
everything he says and how strong he's been. And so then you kind of see Nigel like pulling back on a few things like the mass deportations um, and Tice came out calling anyone supporting Tommy Robinson those people. And then last night it was like senior officials in Reform say that Rupert's been was it affected or something by the online radical right. And I was thinking, what am I one of those? Because I believe that foreign criminals should be deported, and because I believe that illegal immigrants should be sent home. So where is everyone standing? So I don't know. I'm really disappointed, and I'm trying to listen to both sides so I don't make too much of a snap judgment. But my gut feeling like right now is like I'm really disappointed, and it's not like I thought. Everyone's like, well, you shouldn't expect a party to save you or one man to save. And that's not what I thought. I just thought by having someone in or a party in that's not the uni party, maybe we could just get a little push in the right direction so that
yeah.
the British people can help themselves and we can help ourselves. And that was what I had hoped for. So I am disappointed. I think I went out last night and was just like, oh, I was wrong about Nigel. This is feeling all doom and gloom. Um, a couple of people messaged me and said, well, you're not wrong. So I don't know. I don't know. It's one I'm trying to listen to other sides and try to understand and try and see if there's any nuance in there. But I don't know. How do you feel?
Yeah, I don't know. I've been watching, I mean, obviously I was an MEP with Rupert
Yeah,
Lowe, so I do know him. I've sat with him in the European Parliament. I've always had an awful lot of respect for him. He
yeah,
is one of those guys that doesn't seem to be political in the sense that you don't feel like you're speaking to a politician
Yes.
when you speak with him. He's got loads of charm. He's a really nice guy.
Yeah.
I haven't got a bad word to say about him. But I have watched him on social media, and I've thought to myself, he seems to be causing an awful lot of problems for the British government at the moment because
Yeah.
he writes all these letters to the different departments.
Yes.
He's pushing them for statistics. He's creating an
Yes.
awful lot of problems, as the government would put it. And I just thought to myself, this was a few weeks ago before any of this kicked off, and I thought, I wonder if someone's going to have a word with Nigel and
Mm.
say, look, you know, this Rupert guy, we need to do something about him because he's just causing too many problems for government. He really is. So when all of this kicked off, I mean, well, look, let's back up a bit. So what we know so far and what I've seen today is that this whole statement that was put out by Reform, I think it was on Friday, is not about Rupert. It's about
Right.
somebody in Rupert's office. But the way they worded it,
Yes.
it clearly was meant to look like this is all about Rupert. Now,
Yeah.
Tice did an interview over the weekend as well, and he was asked if he is exonerated and he's done nothing wrong, will he get the whip back? And Tice basically says no, he's not coming back. So there's
Mm.
something more going on than this thing. And of course, then there's the incident with the police being informed. But
Yes.
about something that happened back in December. So if it was that important and that awful, why is it taken till now? So I've concluded that this is a they're using this to oust Rupert and get him out of the party. Why? I don't know. I think it's probably a combination of because I think there's been an awful lot of debate over the past weeks and months about all these questions. Who would you prefer to lead Reform? Would it be Rupert or would it be Nigel? And he's almost
Yes.
he's almost outgrowing the party in terms of popular support online, and I think the party probably will be worried about that in the sense that it makes it difficult for them to control the narrative. I'm not trying to justify what they're doing if that is the case, but that seems to me to be what is going on here. I think that like I said, we don't know the exact reasons, but for whatever reason, I think the party feel threatened by
Yeah.
Rupert's presence.
And also, of course, there was a time when Elon Musk said he didn't believe that Nigel was the person
Yes.
to lead. So I think that became a bit of a problem as well. But like you said, I don't understand how, I think Rupert, was it question time? He said something but on Thursday, but then all of a sudden Zia goes to the police on, the next
Yeah.
day. And so it's the timing of it. Like, as you said, if it was that bad, what have you been doing the last couple of months? And it was purposely written in a very ambiguously. Like you didn't really know. Well, I assumed they were talking about Rupert just because of the way it was written, and then if you really looked at it deeply, you go, okay, maybe it isn't about Rupert. And then no one came out and clarified. So from Reform, so it's almost like they wanted the papers to run
Yes.
with the story that it was Rupert. So what's their motive for that? So that to me, it's all very dirty. And maybe that's how politics is, but it all seems very
Yeah.
dirty.
It is, and that's the reason I'll never say never, because if there was an opportunity to go and do something good for the country, then I
Yeah.
would do it. But I hate politics. I hate that whole world. The other thing to point out as well, that statement, not only was it put out, but it did highlight something which I wasn't aware you could do on X, and that is you can hide somebody's reply.
Yes.
Because that was a bit naughty, wasn't it? I mean, surely Rupert should be given a right to reply. To hide his post, which was replying to that statement, doesn't look good. They've unhid it now,
Only
because
because it got called out. I think Connor
yes, yeah,
Tomlinson found out. I didn't even
yeah,
know. As you said, I knew you could hide replies, but I didn't know you could see hide replies that were hidden. And I think there was a button you can click to look at hidden replies. And obviously Rupert had made like a statement clarifying his position. So to hide it is
Yeah.
so, that's dirty.
It's
That's
also very naive, isn't it? Look, I think if you were going to be kind to reform and put away all the questions about what's going on and what they're trying to do here with Rupert, then at a minimum you would say you really have balls this up.
yeah,
You've read the room wrong, and your handling and the presentation, the optics of this whole thing, it's just not good, is it? It's been really badly managed.
really badly managed. And it's really, I think it's sad for the British people because we all want something that's not Labour and it's not Conservative, it's not that uni party. We wanted something different. And, I personally, I did have high hopes. I was like, really rooting for them and looking past a few things because you can't agree with everyone all the
Yeah,
time on
yeah,
everything.
yeah, yeah.
So obviously there's going to be times when I don't agree with some MPs, but I do agree with the majority. And, to me, there was somebody in there that I really, I feel like with Rupert, I could relate the most to everything that he said. But it was fine for me that he wasn't in charge, but I like that he was one of their five.
Yeah.
So it's just, yeah, I can't, all I can say is I'm just very disappointed.
Yeah, I am. I really could see Rupert is one of those figures I could see actually being a fantastic prime minister,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah,
The other thing is, and I would say I probably see this more with Tice, but I'm starting to question this with Nigel as well, is look, obviously you want political leaders to serve the public. That's what they're
yeah,
there to do, right? But I guess rather than have, what would you rather have? Would you rather have a leader who looks at what the public's saying and then just tries to pick what they think is the most popular thing so that they keep their following? Or would you like to have somebody with conviction, principles, who happens to just be the right person for the right time? With Tice, I've seen for a long time, he keeps on getting things wrong. And it seems to be because
yes,
it's like he's got some poll or he's got some, some focus group feedback. And he's just trying to pick the thing which he thinks is the most politically right for that situation. He's going to be the most popular. And
yeah,
it gets it wrong. He got it
all
wrong
the
on the
time.
vaccines. He gets it wrong on so many different things. And even in this interview over the weekend, I mean, this isn't, I think, getting it wrong. This is just ballsing it up. But admitting that even if Rupert is
Mhm.
exonerated, he's not welcome back in the party. I mean, that literally does all of the statements and
Yes.
their messaging, which has gone out, which is we're investigating Rupert, we're taking the whip away with him while we're investigating, and presumably, if he's found innocent, then. But Tyson said no, so he's just basically told us all.
But that's madness to me. If somebody is not guilty, then they should go back to the position they were in before. I mean, I don't know if Rupert would even want to be there, but he should be offered it. I mean, isn't that meant to be how
Yeah.
things work in this country? Not just in a political party, but just throughout the country. If you're not guilty of something, then you're allowed, to have your role and your position back.
Well, especially if that was the reason that you were saying this
Yeah,
is all about. There was no kind of when the statement went out, it wasn't well, Rupert's just been really difficult and so we've had enough with him and also this has happened, so he's having the whip taken off him. It was
yeah.
no, it was this thing that was worded to look like Rupert was I don't know, I guess the underlying message there is a bit of a misogynist. There were female staff involved. It was
Once you start saying that, throwing bullying around, female stuff,
yeah,
like people's minds go to probably the worst, like not the worst place, but like not a good place on it. So you've got this happening, and you've got a party that haven't come out and clarified their statement that it wasn't even Rupert that was supposed to have said or behaved in this certain way towards the females and bullied them. And then what is bullying? Like, some words. And then also this apparent outburst he said he had, which I think was due to was it a ship that had fertilizer on it that was kind of dangerous, and no one was taking him seriously, so he raised his voice and he got angry. Like, isn't this what we want? We want somebody
Yeah.
with a bit of passion who's going to go out there and get angry and fight for us, fight for his constituents, and really get out there and try and make things happen. And if he's ignored, if he's not taken seriously, if he's laughed at, then he'd be passionate about the subject that he's bringing up. So I feel like this has just all been, it's unfair, and it's unfair of them and wrong of them to bring it all into the public when he hasn't actually, he hasn't been found guilty of anything.
Yeah, I think, I mean, this is only my thoughts, and I don't actually know. Um, but of course, Rupert, the day before all of this kicked off, he made it clear that he'd been writing to Nigel, and he'd been requesting that the structure of the party and its kind of democratic principles, they need sorting out. Same thing that Ben
Yes.
Habib has been going on about, because Reform UK is a limited company. Nigel, I forget the exact amount of shares. I think it's about 55. He holds the majority shares. So essentially, nobody can actually get rid of Nigel. And the party's too centralized. Now, they did go through an exercise recently where they've declared now that they've democratized the party. But I think the truth is, that's all window dressing, and we're no different than what we were. And
Right.
I think the fact that Rupert has clearly been questioning this over the past few
Mm.
weeks, I think they feel threatened by it, and they kicked Ben out for exactly this reason, which I think is really, 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 well, disgusting, really, because the only reason Reform UK are in the position they are now is because of Ben Habib, Richard Tice, all of that time when Nigel was nowhere to be seen and he
Yeah.
wasn't in the party. He was just the, grand chairman or whatever. I forget exactly what the title is, but he had nothing to do with reform. He was just an honorary a member. It was them that put in the
Yes.
work. It was Ben on the TV every day pushing Reform UK.
Yes.
And I think I saw a video from Ben. They were at 16% when Nigel decided to come back in. So they did. So the way Ben, I think, has been treated is pretty awful. I know Ben very well. Again, he's another MEP that I was out in Brussels with. Ben is usually very, very calm-headed,
Yes.
very, very balanced, but he's really angry, and you can see that he's really angry. And I think that's because
Yeah.
of the way they've treated him.
Yeah, no, I have to agree with you, because that's when I first started seeing reform, and through Ben Habib, actually, before Nigel had joined. So seeing him go, and then seeing this happen to Rupert, and then listening to Ben now talking about the similarities, and other people who have been around Nigel for a long time, talking, or have worked alongside Nigel, kind of a little like you, talking about, how kind of happens. And then you have to look at, like, what's the common denominator in all of this. That's how I look
Yeah.
at things. Like, when things start falling apart, or similar things keep happening, who or what is the common denominator. So that's kind of how I look at it at the moment. And it's, I hope something good happens. I mean, I don't know what can happen, but it's just,
It's a difficult
I
one
don't
because I
know.
think I think publicly this has gone so far now
Yeah.
that and I know what Nigel's like. Once he makes a decision about
Mm.
something, that's it. And I think he wrote a piece for the Telegraph over the weekend where he seems to be doubling down, and saying, look, you know, we did the right thing. This is a sensitive issue. We're a professional party. We need to deal with things right. Which, yeah, all of that is true. But when you look at the statement and how it's been handled,
Yes.
even if you are dealing with things in the right way, you've made a bugger's muddle of it in the way that you've presented this. So, yeah, I mean, do you think, I mean, we don't know at the moment, but do you think this is the start of the end for reform?
Honestly, I don't know. I've got to, it's interesting to ask people on their thoughts on that, but I honestly don't know. I mean, for me, it kind of is. I just can't see how I can support it anymore. The amount of excuses I've made for things that Nigel said, Richard Tice has
Yeah.
said, now this, the timing of it, the fact that I really do believe they wanted the papers to run with the story that it was Nigel. They didn't want to clarify, and they purposely made it ambiguous. I just, and I
Yeah, I
think a lot
think
of
I'm
people
thinking the
see
same
it.
as you
Yeah,
because, especially look, I think the reason they did so well is because they did get, Reform did get a lot of support from people who also support Tommy Robinson and that
yes,
whole movement.
yes,
And I think they've not done right by that movement. I shouldn't imagine they're the type of people as well in the actual polls, the not the elections, the polls, which don't they're probably not part of polling groups, so it's probably not
no,
reflecting in their polling now. But they've done a lot of damage there, and I think now they've done a lot of damage with a lot of people because Rupert was really popular. People liked what he was saying. They liked his tone. They liked the
yes,
fact that he was a bit of a vigilante. He,
yeah.
writing all these letters, forcing the government's hand on statistics, and really making the government I think very, very vulnerable on areas where they should be vulnerable. Obviously, immigration and all of that. And he was doing a really good job. So
Because that's how you
I,
fight everything, isn't it? You have to fight everything with facts and statistics. And he
yeah,
was getting the numbers in. So when he was to put up an argument, he could actually go through facts, not just opinion, but he's got the numbers and the statistics to show and back up everything he says. And people like me who, voted reform, wanted to be part of reform, join reform, support reform, it was a lot of the things that they said early at the start, that they were really going to crack down on the illegals, that they were going to deport the foreign criminals, the people that had come here illegally. It wasn't acceptable to be putting people up in these migrant hotels. All of these things, which they've kind of gone softer and softer on, except for Rupert, who maintained
yeah,
that strength, backed everything up with numbers and statistics. And like I said, the timing of it's very suspect as well. It's because when Rupert spoke up a little bit about how he wanted to see a couple of changes, but to do this, I think it's made a lot of supporters, just general people that don't really know about politics, people like me. It's made people think, these are the people that are meant to be championing us for free speech, for you know being patriotic, for saving this country. And then it's like, well, hold on, you've just gone to the police about a verbal argument, a workplace
yeah.
argument,
Do you know what?
verbal.
I think that it seems like to me that Reform's desire for power is more important than actually what we want them to do, which is
Yeah,
to lead this country away. I think Nigel wants to be prime minister more than he does believe in the principles which he's telling us.
yes.
That's what I worry. Right, let's move on. Starmer, one word to describe him.
Don't bleep. I'm gonna bleep it out if you. I don't generally say it. Yeah, I have to be
Go
very
on, get it
obedient.
out. I know what you're going to say because I'm going to say the same thing. Go
Honestly,
on.
I can't. He's a cunt.
He is a cunt. And I don't like that
Oh,
word either. And I don't say it. I very rarely say it, but he is, isn't he? And
he
what he
is
represents. He's literally lied his way into the Labour Party. And then he's lied his way to win the election. Literally everything.
everything's a lie. The farmers. He lied about the pensioners, tax, everything,
Fuel.
everything.
You
Fuel.
know, we're gonna freeze council tax. Your fuel bills will go down. We'll freeze them. Everything that he said. I mean, they were attacking the Tories in Parliament 6 months before the election, saying that if you vote for these lot over here,
Mhm.
they're going to take away the winter fuel allowance. That's what he was saying in Parliament. And then what do they do?
Take it away. He's such a lying snake. It's unbelievable. And I have to say, I do calling that word a lot on Twitter. If you go to my profile and type it in, you'll probably see it on a
I can't pretend that I
couple
didn't
of
know.
yeah, weekly basis. You just wanted me to say it in I don't think I've actually said it on a podcast. I'm always quite wary about my mouth, and I do worry. I joke like I probably sound like a fishwife down a fish market on my Twitter, but I get so angry and I have to vent it out. And it's great when I wake up and I say it, and I probably say it out loud in my head, and I probably out loud, not in my head, sorry, out loud, and have my Tourette's outbursts of it, I think. But
Do you, do
everything
you,
he does is a lie.
yeah. Do you think, because I'm starting to think this, I mean, obviously we saw the psyop that was COVID, and we saw the fact that, like me, I'm sure you would have been shouting at your phone, your
Yes.
computer. But how do you not see that this is all just a big scam? How do you
Yeah.
not see? Do you think that, because obviously we had COVID and that became apparent that the majority of people are just indoctrinated. They just
Yes.
trust what the government says. They trust what the media says.
Yeah.
Do you think that a big percentage of the population are just they're never ever going to wake up from this indoctrination? They're too far gone, almost like the Matrix, when
Yeah.
he's walking Neo through, they're doing the simulation, and he's saying these people that they're normal people, but they're your enemy because they're not even aware that they're in the Matrix.
Yeah. Sometimes I have hope. Sometimes I think, right, finally, people are waking up. There's some people that have apologized for what they said about me for refusing the jab. They've apologized. They see it now. They understand what's going on. They're talking bad about Big Pharma. And then next thing, you're like, hold on a minute. Now you're calling me brainwashed again because I'm against the military industrial complex.
Yeah.
And it's, and war and everything else. And, I get this hope that for 1 second, everyone's waking up. And then it's like, no, here we are. It's like being back in 2020 with the whole COVID nonsense again. So, it's you're flying your flags, your banners, you're changing your profile pictures, and it's all like,
Yeah, it's weird, isn't
did you
it? Because
learn?
um, look, putting aside whether you think Trump's right, whether you think the this whole thing with Biden over the past 3 years and Ukraine, putting all of that aside and not choosing whether it's right or wrong, surely we want peace, don't we?
Right.
And it just seems to be at the moment the media have built this narrative over the past 3 years, and all of a lot more, a big majority of the population are just going along with it. And now, when they're being told war is peace, because that's essentially
Yes.
what they're being told at the moment. No, 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 no. Yes, we want peace, but we need to give Ukraine more weapons. We need to tool up. Europe needs to tool up. We're going to spend 800 billion on more weapons.
We're
That
going to
is
put boots on the
essentially,
ground. We're going to
yeah,
put boots on the
yeah.
ground. We're going to put British troops there.
That is war. That's telling people that war is peace, and people are cheering it on.
And it's mind blowing to me. All of this is mind blowing to me. And then you think, Starmer said it. And then I'm thinking, right, well, he is the compulsive liar. He has lied about the farmers. He's lied about the pensions. He's lied about tax. He's lied about everything. Surely British men are not going to go over there and stand in the freezing cold in Ukraine and fight for other people and other people's flag when you can't even hold up your British flag in England without the police
Yeah.
ripping it away from you, right? You've got all these illegal migrants coming across the channel and living very comfortably in a hotel with heating and clothing and a new iPhone and food. And while that's happening in England and Britain, you want our men to go over to Ukraine and fight. And that's peace. And that's the craziest thing. It's like, in the peace summit, when all the leaders got together, we want peace, so we're sending weapons. It's mad.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you've got the people that go, oh, it's clear as day that Trump wants World War III. Why? Because he's trying to negotiate a peace deal. It's so back to front. And this is the thing, it's just, I look at it and I'm thinking, you know what? I can't put myself through what I was trying to do 4 years ago, trying to change
Yeah,
people's minds, trying
yeah.
to wake people up, you know, wanting to shake people and say, don't listen. And to think, you know, of going through all of that again when people really don't want to know,
But
and
this
it's
is
almost
why,
the aversion.
Leilani, I asked that question. Do
Hmm.
you think that just I think a big percentage of the population are just too far indoctrinated? I guess my big question is, do you think we're going to war?
Gosh, well, we kind of are because it's a proxy war and we're sending all our money over there. We're sending all billions and billions, and we can always find money for the war purse. It's like, what about the people in the British people in this country? You're letting them down in every way through, you know, through the healthcare system, through the cost of the, through every single way, just stealing all their money through taxes, and you're giving it all and putting it all, you know, into the war purse. Um, and so I don't think they ever want war to end. I think they want it to keep going
Yeah.
and going and going and
But
going.
do you think, because what I've heard a lot about, I mean, Trump has been saying for a long time that Europe needs to step up and start
Yeah.
protecting itself. But, the last time Europe did this and rearmed big styly and took control, where did it lead? That was
Yeah.
before World War Two, wasn't it?
Well, I think as well, Trump's saying that because he's like, why should America keep paying for all these wars? Which, you know, also an American citizen, I'm a dual citizen. So as, you know, as a British person, I'm like, oh God, no, I'd love America to help us. But at the same time, you know, as an American, I'm like, well, why should the Americans be paying to protect Europe all the time? And it's like, why can't we start finding peaceful resolutions to things? So
Yeah, I
I
mean, it's weird. It's a
understand.
weird one with Trump, isn't it? Because I
Yeah,
think, look, I think you and I will probably have correct me if I'm wrong, we'll probably have the same answer to this question. I think that I agree with him on most things. The
yeah,
only problem I have with him, though, is, well, I guess there's two things. Firstly, he does say some wild things. This whole thing about
yeah,
making Canada a state of the United States, and also saying that we want to buy Greenland and all that. I don't know what to make of that. I just think it's bonkers. It's clearly,
yeah.
I don't know whether it's supposed to be bonkers just to
I
rile the
think
world up and create sort of lots of subterfuge so that he can do what he wants within that. But the problem is there's that, and then also the way he goes about stuff. So I don't think there's anything wrong with withdrawing aid from Ukraine to force
no.
it to the table for peace. But I guess with Trump, because he's so direct and so abrasive, that he just seems those two things, so saying crazy things and then the way he goes about things, seem to polarize. They seem to
Yeah,
and that's what's happening across the world at the moment. You're either for Trump or you're against him.
yes,
And that's not helpful. That's not the way you create. This is regardless of what he's actually doing, because, like I said, I think what he's actually doing is right. Um, and there's lots of media people that are pointing out, well, hang on a second, you're criticizing Trump for securing the borders, but actually they're showing videos of Clinton and Obama doing the
yeah.
same thing, and you think, yeah, so he's not that extreme on a lot of the
No.
things that he's doing. So why is it that he's so polarizing? And yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts on Trump?
So it's funny because when he was first elected, I hated him, but I also hated Hillary. But I really hated Trump, and I don't think I said a good word about Trump until he said, "I think we should keep America open." Um, During the times when they wanted to lock it down. So that was the
Yeah,
only time I started. Then plus I was locked down. So then I started hearing what he'd said in full versus the little snippets that the mainstream was sending out. So then I started to like, and I was like, oh, do I want to like this person? Um, but I did end up, did end up liking. Now, what I think, I don't know if I'm making excuses the same way I've made excuses for, some of the things I don't like about reform, but I've always thought that Trump says the most crazy things, like about Greenland or Canada, because, if here's where you want your deal, he'll say something right out of field in order to get it back and negotiate it back to this place. And
Yeah.
it's almost like a negotiation tactic. Like, I'll do something really extreme, and if we can just meet in the middle, that's where the deal ends or begins. And I think that's in his Art of the Deal book that he
But do
wrote.
you think though,
So,
I mean, you know, I
but
accept
it
that,
is
but
stupid.
but
It makes people think, God,
well,
that's
no, because
nuts.
it's bonkers. I mean, surely he knows that there isn't a version of reality. Well, certainly that there's not many versions of reality where Canada just says, "Yeah, okay,
No,
we'll cease being a country and we'll just join with it." So he must know that. He definitely knows that. So I mean, otherwise the guy's certifiable. If he really
yes.
believes that America can make Canada its
And it would be
51st
wrong.
state.
It would be it would be insane,
Yeah.
and it would be wrong. And it's but I don't know. But
So
like
what's
I
he?
said,
My point is, you know, you've just said it's a
yeah.
negotiation, but he's not negotiating to
No, he's just saying
bring
something
Canada
stupid.
into the United
No,
States.
no.
So what's he doing? Is he purposely polarizing everyone just to create chaos?
You know what?
So
I've got
that
to be honest. I don't actually know what he said. I just remember hearing it and thinking, did he say that?
no,
Why
he
would he
keeps on
say
calling
that?
Trudeau Governor Trudeau.
Or is he just doing
Yeah,
it to
yeah,
wind? Is he doing it to wind them up? I know he's obviously got a big problem with the fentanyl because it's been made
yeah.
legal very close to the American border and it's coming across. But I don't know if he's doing it as a wind up to wind up the Liberals, because I mean, if that's what he really meant, I would, I'd be very like disapproving
Well,
of any of that.
that would
It's
show
like,
that he's unfit to be president
yes,
if he thought that
if
he
he
really
really
believed
thought
that's going to
it,
happen. So that was an interesting thing you said
yeah,
there to wind up the Liberals, because I guess if you can get them all, well, you've seen them videos of them, losing it about all sorts of stuff, like oh, how dare he ban men from participating in women's sport and all that. They go bonkers. So maybe that's part of his strategy is to just send them all so like deliriously nuts that then they're kept busy over there or protesting or doing whatever else out of the way, just in their frenzy. I don't know. It's
but it is interesting that, like, it is worrying, I suppose, that sane and rational people like us are like thinking, well, is he being serious or is this a joke? And I hope it's a joke, and I really, really hope it's a joke. But is it? So that's kind of the slightly worrying bit about him saying stuff like that.
yeah.
It's like you don't know if it is a joke or if
Well,
it's not. But I'd hope,
he's clearly clever, and I think on a lot of the things that we stand on, the side that we stand on, things like all of this identity politics, all of
yes,
this gender stuff, all of this racial stuff as well. I think he's absolutely bang on.
yeah,
We should aim, the highest aspiration should be to aim to be colorblind, to not see people's color and not see people's gender as well. We
yeah,
should just treat everybody the same, and people should get on via merit. I mean, you can't
yeah.
argue with that. And there's
No,
this whole thing with men in women's sports, absolutely ridiculous. So he is right on a lot of things. I think. So we just have to assume that there's either some political strategy in there and winding up the Liberals, um, or it's a joke, one of the two. But I just worry that the problem is when you look at the press in Europe and how they report on
oh
Trump,
yeah,
what him saying crazy things like that just play into this narrative that we need to, well, it's the whole driving movement for rearming Europe because we can't rely on America anymore. They've lost it. They've got Trump. Look at him. He's an idiot. He's dangerous. He believes that Canada's going to come into the United States. We need to, and I think that's my only worry with
yeah,
this Trump administration is that it's Trump himself is polarizing the world and that Europe is going to, well, it is essentially um, divesting on the relationship which has kept, I guess, the world safe since the Second World War, which is this, relationship between Europe and America.
and I hope that they can see past it and actually rebuild the relationship. But I don't know if he's kind of done it. Um, he's done it to kind of push peace. It sounds crazy, doesn't it? You know, support yourself, invest more in weapons, but in a way to kind of push peace, because knowing that they can't, knowing there's not really that much money, unless you really start stealing more and more and more from us, there is no money to be able to keep doing that and to just keep piling money into weapons and war. So
Well, there is a magic money tree, and
that's true.
they just print us. I mean, look at COVID. Look at
You know what?
COVID.
That is true.
I think it was £500 billion in the UK, and I think in the US, over the space of 2 years, they printed something like it was. I can't remember the exact figure. It was something along the lines of 80% of all the
Yeah,
dollars in existence have been printed in the last 2 years. It was on that kind of scale. So
it is
they can.
true. But this is the problem, and this is why we get such inflation, and people don't want to talk
Yes.
about that side of this is why we have this inflation, because you can't just keep printing it, because it kind of takes away the actual value of that money, which is
Yeah,
why
of course it
you
does. Yeah.
know everything's just gone up so much. But they don't want to say that,
But look,
Labour.
it's like taking a £10 note and cutting it in half. You know, it's still worth £10. You just made it into two £10, but it's still one. So, and you know, in goods and services, they still cost the same thing. So the more money you print, the more you devalue. I mean, they used to in the olden days, when you had gold and silver coins, you used to
Yeah,
get your chisel out and chisel a bit off. I mean, that's essentially what's going on, what the government does by
yeah.
printing money.
And the same thing if they try and roll out this universal credit that they keep on talking about, just devalues everything, because you get such an amount for doing nothing versus what you get for actually, similar to what you get for actually working. So it just kind of devalues our money
Yeah.
every single which way. But I don't know. Like you said, going back to the question about will there be, war, or will we put boots on the ground? I don't know. I mean, Starmer's a liar. I don't think British people will be up for it. I think if they could, they would. I absolutely have no doubt that if, they seem to want to escalate and escalate and escalate, there's then they criticize Trump, but there's been 4 years to try and negotiate something,
Yes.
right? There's
Yeah.
been 4 years to try and de escalate, but everything seems to be right. We're sending bigger weapons, we're sending these fighter jets, we're sending more, we're sending more. And, the moment Trump comes in and says, like, right, I really want there to be peace, I want to try and negotiate, everyone's too worried about if he's nice or not. It's like, is he a nice person? Well, if it's no good him stopping the war if he's been mean and said bad words. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like that attitude. It's like there's
Well,
no
the other
point him negotiating peace if he's gonna, say a horrible couple of things to somebody.
well, the other
It's
thing,
mad.
Leilani, is that when you look at the what they're suggesting in Europe, they're suggesting, I think, led by France and the UK, we're going to put troops on the ground in Ukraine now, right? When you've got a negotiation, a peace negotiation, both sides need to agree. Otherwise, you
Yeah.
haven't got peace,
No.
right? Um, you and I know the reason for this war is because NATO has slowly been
Yeah.
creeping up around Russia, despite all the promises. And basically, then there was talk about Ukraine becoming a NATO country.
Yes.
It's because of that that Putin has invaded. So why would they think, and they're not stupid,
No.
why would they be suggesting putting UK troops, French troops, which are NATO troops, in Russia? They know, sorry, in Ukraine, they know Russia will never agree to it.
Yep.
So this whole peace plan, which they're suggesting, they know it won't work. So what do we make of that? They don't want peace.
Exactly. And that's the only way. They can keep calling themselves a summit for peace, but they want the actual opposite. And, the sad thing about it, there is obviously this mineral agreement that's going on because of the money that was sent over, which is probably, really just laundered money by the
Yeah.
Democrats, and American taxpayers want to get some of their money back. So now it's coming down to mineral rights, which is always what war's ever about, land and mineral rights. So now the minerals are just going to, you know, USA, Europe, whatever, rather than Russia. But But Trump was like, well, what we'll do is if our companies go in and start rebuilding, then there'll be Americans there. So instead
Yeah.
of troops, you have just American people working and whatever.
Well, an
And
economic interest, isn't it, as well?
yeah,
If America's got economic interest, what does it do around the world where it's got economic interest? Well, they protect that.
yeah. So then obviously, there's no troops, but it's not likely that the Russians would start bombing, the American interest there, or else that, really does
Yeah.
get you into World War III.
Yeah, absolutely. Final topic. Let's talk about well, actually I've got two, but we'll just cover Brexit very, very briefly because I don't think I've engaged at all
No.
with you on Brexit. So I don't even know actually what you felt at the time. So I guess the first question is, did you support it? And knowing what we know now, would you change it?
So I was living in the USA at the time, so I wasn't really too involved or didn't see much about it. At the time, I probably would have voted against Brexit at that time. But having seen the way Europe acted through COVID, and obviously I wasn't really political, so I didn't really know much about anything going on with Brexit or what it really, really meant. Um, but seeing the way that Europe acted with COVID and they actually had COVID passports and all the rest of
Yeah.
it, I think, my God, if we had been part of that, and even though we had, our own lockdowns and ridiculous rules, if we had to go by what a lot of the countries in the EU were doing, then that would have been absolute hell, which then made me realize, okay, Brexit is a good thing. We need to, you know, maintain our sovereignty. We shouldn't have to answer to what Brussels is saying or anything else. And um, now I do agree with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't actually delivered Brexit. I think that's the
No,
thing because
that's the
people say that
thing.
it's been a disaster. Well, yeah, they haven't even delivered Brexit. Would I change it? Absolutely not. Would I? When you look at what's going on in Romania at the moment,
Yes.
where I interviewed Kayleen Georgescu back in October before the elections, and he said to me at the time, "I have the support of the Romanian people." And I thought to myself, well, you're doing an interview with little me. I'm not a big journalist. I've got a fairly good following, but not, So I just thought, everyone's always optimistic, aren't they, in politics? That was kind of what I was thinking. And then he stormed it. He won the
Yeah.
first round of the elections, and because of his stance on Ukraine, he wants peace. And NATO is trying to build the biggest NATO base in Europe in Romania at the moment. They want to construct it there because of his views on Ukraine. They cancelled the elections. They arrested him last week, and now he put in his new application for the rerun of the elections in May, and they've banned him. And five of the 10 judges who voted on that, whether to allow him to run, are not even proper judges. They're politicians in the leading the parties that are in power at the moment. That is what's going on in Europe, and even in Poland, an opposition MP running for election, he was arrested. And again, it's all lawfare. It's like this stuff with
Yeah.
Trump. It's rife. I mean, they even talked about banning the AfD party. And they had a debate in the parliament in Germany about banning the AfD, even though they're the second biggest political party now, and they were polling very, very high in the polls. So that's Europe. I mean, that's democracy in Europe. It's
Yeah.
just it's just absolutely bonkers.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, like, where has democracy gone? If, this, I only just read about the guy in Romania, and to me, it's just insane that if he was doing that well, he would want it. To ban him's just nuts. It's like
Yeah.
Europe's falling apart. We're falling apart. Every single bit of freedom and democracy is being taken away from us. Like, here, vote, but you can't vote for the people we don't want you to vote for.
And that's the thing. That's the thing. I think that this has been going on for an awful long time, but they've just lost control now. So in the UK, the way that they go about democracy is you just basically make sure that the only parties we can choose from are all the support all of the things they want. So
Yes.
it's an illusion though, and people,
Yeah.
most people believe the illusion. And I just think what's going on in Europe, they've like I said, I think this illusion of democracy has been around for a very, very long time. We've not really had democracy, but I just think they've lost control of the narrative in Europe. And now we're seeing the true democracy that we've got, which is you haven't got one. If the
And
wrong candidate comes
yeah.
through, we're just going to stop him running.
And this is what actually worries me, going all the way back to reform again, is that, the one party that could possibly have challenged the uni party is now falling to pieces. And it's like, how much outside influence has that been? How much of that has been like the lefties or the conservatives or Labour or those kinds of people stoking this on and, kind of fanning the flames and making it far worse than it is. I mean, we've seen the media just pick up on it immediately, completely bash Rupert Lowe because the statement wasn't written clearly. And it just worries me. Like, are we only going to be left with Labour and Conservative again in 2029? So,
I, I,
this is
I
the
do fear
problem.
that because the problem is if there's a breakaway, a new party started now, or maybe UKIP is the answer for a lot of people. We just break up. The right
Yeah.
becomes even more fragmented. So rather
Yes.
than just having a conservative and reform, now you've got three parties on the right. That's what I fear is going to happen now.
Yeah.
Um, Leilani, I told you I'm dyslexic, and you don't know what it is with your name, but
You said
Leilani.
it.
That's
Yeah, there you go. You got it.
Leilani. Final question. David Betts, he's a professor of war in the modern world at King's College, London. He says because multiculturalism has failed and is breaking down national cohesion and our, I guess, our capital in this country, he says the UK is heading for civil war. What do you think?
I think it's possible. It's a mess. I mean, I went to Dubai recently and it's interesting because there were less people when I was in Dubai with a full face head covers than there are in London. When I just went down to London this weekend and I was like, wow, I'm seeing a lot of the full face covers. And there's a lot of people that are coming in to this country that their culture sees women very, very differently. They're coming over on the boats. They see women second class, not even worse than second class citizens, as
Yeah.
animals. They and the cultures don't align. We're spending all this money on translators within the NHS and within the DWP, which is the benefits agencies, to translate so these people that can't speak the language can get benefits. And it's making, British people very angry, and rightly so, because, hard-working British people getting tax increases over and over and over, having to, pay for all of this. So I think it's very possible. I found Dubai to be very civilized because the law enforcement is strong. You in England, you go to any not even just towns or cities. Actually, it's everywhere. It's rife. You have to worry about and if you're wearing jewelry, if you've got a watch on, if you've got a
Yeah.
nice handbag. People are getting stabbed all over the place. Women are being, pulled into bushes and alleys just when they're out walking their dogs. All of this is happening because there doesn't seem to be any repercussions for any crime committed. We have, unless of course it's something you've said on social media, then you can get locked up for 2 years. But you actually, commit an act of violence. It's you're lucky if you get, if that person gets caught. Sorry,
I
if
mean, the
yeah,
other
if you
thing
were the
that David
victim, you're
Betts was
lucky.
saying, he was saying, in terms of policing, there are areas of the UK where if the police want to go into,
Mm.
rather than just say if they were to rock up to my estate or most estates, they would just turn up, they would just go in. But before entering these communities, they speak to the community leaders. It's almost like the police are negotiating with them, and this, and because the police are so themselves frightened
Yes.
of community relations.
Well,
Yeah,
remember, where was it? I can't remember the place. Now, it could have been Hare Hills. I might be wrong, but there was social services went in because they'd seen a child at hospital that had a head injury and they were worried. So they took the child, I think, for observation, and a whole riot broke out.
I think that was Leeds, wasn't it?
Was it late? Yeah. So, and
Because
a
it was
riot
just
broke out.
before the Southport riots. I think it was either a week
Yes.
or 2 weeks before.
Yes.
I think that was Leeds. Yeah,
And again, what we saw there was our two-tier policing. The response to that was very different to what they did with the people and protesters and rioters in Southport. It was,
yeah,
and here is another problem is that we, as you said, there's places where the police would speak to a community leader rather than go in to that estate. But also you have, once they do, or once something happens, you also have a two-tier system of policing on how they handle these people. And then obviously just recently in government, they spoke about how, you know, if a case goes to court, that the judge should know about the background of a person in case
yeah.
they're
The
a
sentencing
minority.
guidelines. Yeah,
The
yeah,
sentencing guidelines, they needed to know, was that person a minority? Was that person, and their background, religion, gender, sexuality. It's nuts. If you're not treating people in the same way and just say, let's look at what's happened and we'll treat you the same way. If you've stolen,
yeah.
if you've stabbed somebody, why do we need to know all of that?
Exactly, exactly. And the other example, obviously, was the Manchester airport. I think there was three
Yes.
guys, wasn't they, that attacked a well, two police women. I think one of them ended up with a broken nose, or certainly a lot of damage done to her face, and they were just let out. They were let out on bail, and you just think if that had been some, England just to play the game, how they see it. If he'd been wearing an England shirt and and smacked some police officer in the face, they wouldn't be walking out.
No, they wouldn't. I
Yeah.
mean, we saw it in the Southport riots. How long? It didn't take long for those people to be arrested, refused bail, and locked up. So there is absolutely two-tier policing, and I think the British people are getting fed up of it. But with that said, I've said this for 5 years, haven't I? I've been like, how much more can people take? When are people going to rise up? Oh, they surely enough is enough, and they're going to do something soon, and then it doesn't happen. So I don't know. Maybe people have just been kind of drugged and medicated out to stop having any kind of emotion of or distracted by entertainment to have the kind of emotion that will light that fire to actually, you know,
Well, it'll be
do
things
anything.
getting a lot, because the thing is, I think during COVID, it was horrendous, and certainly some of the things they were talking about, and you knew where they wanted to take this. That was horrendous. But actually, because I was at the time was just like, oh my God, I've got to get out of the UK.
Yeah.
I've got to get out. But actually, the reality in the UK, um, yeah, we had lockdowns, but you could still go out. There weren't police marching on the streets, and the vaccine passports they brought in, certainly in Wales here, they were self-certified. So you tested at home and then you said whether you passed. So it was kind of it was almost like trying to go along with the narrative that was going on globally, but we weren't getting the rough stuff. We were just getting off quite lightly.
If
If
you
you want
wanted
to,
to, it was
yeah,
very
yeah,
easy to break the rules, which I did all the
yeah.
time, by the way. I broke the rules all the time. And it was actually very easy to do so. So it's not like Canada or Australia where
Oh, there were no
literally,
mandates apart from the care home staff, and obviously that
yeah.
was reversed very quickly. But not like other countries where
Well,
people were
remember
forced
Australia,
to, yeah.
babies, they wouldn't allow babies to go from one state to another. So babies would die because they needed a hospital literally on the next state across that was only a small distance away, and they weren't allowed to cross that border. So they let people and babies and all sorts die. So I guess, yeah, we did have it light if you wanted to break the rules, which were easy to do. That was,
Yeah.
there was,
So I think that's the thing. I think, look, our worst fears for the UK are this whole thing. They get digital ID through.
mm,
Tesla, Q4 this year, they're going to start rolling out their robots. So they've got humanoid robots, and they're amazing technology. They're the only company in the world which have actually built hands which are just as dexterous and and can work as technically as a human hand. Over the next 5 years, lots of people are going to be replaced in factories, all of these jobs. Why would you have a person that you've got to give holiday to, that you've got to, cost a lot of money? There's legal health and safety issues, all that kind of stuff, when
yeah,
you can just bring in a robot and it'll work 24 hours a day. And so it's going to happen. So we get
yeah,
digital ID, we get CBDCs,
yeah.
central bank digital currencies, and then we get UBI, universal basic income, which essentially means you know don't buy the hand that feeds you. That'll be government's approach. So when you think of all that, I think when David Betts is talking about, will he thinks the UK is headed for civil war, I think it's because actually we haven't seen anything yet in terms of the horrors which potentially are down the road.
Actually, I think you could be right, because I've said this a long time, that it is problem, reaction, solution. They are allowing this crime to happen. They are allowing the boats to come in. I think they are allowing it in order to cause the problems so they can offer the solutions, which you have said, a surveillance state, this, the central banking digital currency, which, and everyone's like, well, this is like such a conspiracy theory, but you only have to look. They were just talking about it recently. I think in the EU they were talking about it. Saw it on Twitter yesterday. The lady speaking up, saying like, "Look, we're thinking of bringing in the digital euro and having it attached, and then your tax immediately comes out of that, and they can start,
And the
turning,
fines.
and the fines.
Yeah,
If
yeah,
you
yeah,
to
yeah,
break
yeah.
your net zero lockdown, or you've driven too many miles in your car, and they can, they start to be able to add all of this up. Or we've seen that you're eating a real steak and not a lab grown steak. They can look at everything you're doing. And and universal basic income, they're already saying they want to trial it now in I think it was in Manchester, I read, basically giving the same amount of money that somebody on a minimum wage would earn.
Yeah. Which,
So
look, the
you're
thing
sitting
is
at
with
home
all
doing
of these
nothing.
things, the thing, UBI, CBDCs, digital IDs, they are just technologies. It's a little bit like guns. Guns don't kill people, people do. And look, UBI could be a fantastic thing, I think, because if the world becomes automated, productivity is going to go up, and also people, well, what people going to live on if people haven't got jobs? So it could be a good solution. Digital ID could be great. Things like voting in elections. If you can verify who you are on your phone and
Yeah,
vote in a general election, 67% turnout will go up, I should imagine, overnight. So you will get a different type of election. CBDCs, or digital money. I can't imagine in 30 years' time and we live in the future when there's flying cars eventually, even though they predicted it for now. But, why would we be carrying around bits of metal and paper to represent money? The problem with all of it is that it gives government centralized power, and we know
yes.
what, and that's the problem here, isn't it? It's not the actual things
Yes,
themselves.
exactly. That's exactly what it is. It's the problem with who's running the government at the time. So, it could be great that you have an electric car that turns off if somebody steals it, right?
Yeah,
Great. Cuts the engine. But what about when it's used, say, for example, in when we had the lockdowns, when you're not allowed to cross to the next county, or
or
you're
if
not
you're on
allowed
your
to
way
go
to a
more than 30.
protest.
Yeah, or you're on your way to protest, you're driving outside your 30-mile zone, or it's clocked up how many miles you've done, and therefore your CO2 output. So all these things, like by themselves, as you said, it's fine. It's like when they get into the wrong hands in the wrong government, that's when it becomes a danger. And it's possible because we've seen it. We
Yeah,
saw during lockdowns. I couldn't, I lived in America 17 years, and I never understood, why people wanted guns. And then, you see all you saw the BLM riots were like insane, the way they were
Yeah.
looting and going through where I used to live, which on Melrose, which was safe. Things got every single shop, restaurant, little nails, and these are all independent places. They're not chains. Got completely damaged, and I was like, God. And then it was like writing "Eat the rich, kill the rich," do all over the by Antifa, all over like Beverly Hills, and you think, yeah, I
I get
kind of
it.
understand now. People want to
I've
defend
gone from,
themselves.
10, 15 years ago being absolutely anti-gun, thinking America was bonkers and we'd done the right thing,
Mm,
to my position now. I get it. I wish we were allowed guns in this country because I would have some guns, definitely. Because especially in America, where the reason that it's in the Constitution is because, when free speech fails, well, what's the Second Amendment?
yeah.
It's well, here's your gun.
And that's the thing as well. It's because we've seen it here. You see that criminals in England, where you're not even allowed guns, have guns. So imagine
Yeah,
in America, if they try and take away everyone's guns, the criminals are never giving their guns away. So the only people that would ever hand over their guns would be the nicest, law-abiding citizens. They'll be the ones that, okay, you're taking the guns. Here are the guns. So and that's just looking at England, where we see people getting shot here now. And it's like we're in
yeah,
a place that doesn't even have guns. The
I
criminals can
know.
get them.
We're not even going to be allowed pointy knives soon. Crossbows they're going to be coming for. I mean, they literally are just disarming the public of any way of defending themselves if
Yeah,
our government goes proper tyrannical, which, during COVID, it was a recurring dream that I had, that it was in the future and there were vans going around picking up the unvaccinated. And it wasn't
yeah,
unfounded because that actually went on in Australia, and,
yeah.
and other places in the world. So, yeah. Listen, Leilani, we're already, we're well over an hour actually. But it just goes to show I knew I'd
Yeah.
enjoy this conversation. So listen, thank you so much. And we must do this
Thank
again
you.
soon.
Definitely. Thanks for having me on. Thanks.
Thank you.